All right, thanks so much for being here tonight, everyone, for our Changing the Way We Work experiences with the elements from pilot shelter directors. Tonight we are very lucky to have Gina Knepp hosting this panel with an amazing group of panelists. Before I turn it over to Gina, I just wanted to remind people that the chat function is here for your use. Please use it throughout as much as you would like. If you have a question, use the Q&A function. That way we can make sure we get to your question, and as people are talking in the chat, it won't get lost. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Gina, and I'm gonna be here for any kind of technical support, but I'm turning my camera off and I will be going away.
All right, I'll holler if I need you. I know where to find you.
Awesome.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Gina Knupp. I'm with the Michelson Found Animals Foundation, and I've been on the Haas executive team since Haas was was created, if you will. Tonight we have a really powerful panel, in my opinion. I knew all of them but one prior to Haas becoming a reality, and they are strong, incredible leaders in this industry. We have Mike Wheeler with Cabot Animal Support Services in Arkansas, Shelly Simmons with Greenville County Animal Care in South Carolina, and Dunn from Oakland Animal Services in California, and Jorge Ortega, who's with Guilford County Animal Shelter in North Carolina. And what we're going to talk about is how animal services is transforming, how we're changing, and how some innovative shelter directors in the United States have adopted the belief that we can essentially create a renaissance for this industry, if you will, reimagining ourselves a little. But I think it's super important to note that we all walk on the shoulders of giants. You know, what we did 10 years ago was different than what we're doing today. And it doesn't mean it was bad or wrong. It was just what we thought was right at that given moment. But like any other business or profession, we learn, we evolve. And I think Haas is a very good example of learning from the data, not focusing so much on what's anecdotal, but focusing on the reality of our business and adjusting what we do as to improve the care we give to animals and also the human being at the other end of the leash. So without taking up any more time, I'm going to start with a question that I want all of the panelists to answer. And Shelly, I'll let you go first. There's 11 elements. There's a lot of them. It's a lot of heavy lifting. It's impossible to have implemented them all fully in the, a year and 3 or 4 months that we've been doing this. But I want you to tell me what element you implemented that you think has had the biggest impact on life-saving. Shelly, what was that?
Great question. Well, I would say if I had to choose one, it would be our supported self-rehoming program. I think probably keeping families together element is also right up there, but it's a little bit harder to quantify our success because we don't yet have a lot of the tools in place to be able to track things, although that's happening now and it's growing. But I really think any element that focuses on keeping animals out of the shelter is what's going to have the most impact on life saving. It's what we focused on for the last 6 years. And we've gone from 20,000 animals coming in every year down to, we're projecting less than 5,000 to enter our shelter this year. And it's all based on keeping pets out of the shelter that don't need to be here.
So Shelly, talk a little bit more about the supported self-rehoming. Some people may not even know what that means. Did you use a particular program? Did you get pushback from the community for doing it? Or how about, what was the role of not just the shelter, but the role of the parent that's trying to find a new home for their animal? That was a lot of questions.
Yeah, well, let me talk a little bit about the roles. Well, I guess maybe just a, very short blurb. Supported self-rehoming is basically just as it sounds. Animal does not come into the shelter, but instead we're supporting the pet owner and helping them to rehome their animal so that they don't have to come into the shelter. And so our role in supported self-rehoming is really to provide one-on-one support to pet owners. we educate pet owners on how surrendering a pet to the shelter should really be their last resort. But then we also give them the tools that they need to be successful rehoming their pet on their own. And so we provide marketing support, by posting pets in the community on our adoption webpage and Facebook page and Instagram and all of that. We share ideas on where else they can market their pet to the right audience. We offer every animal that's posted for adoption a spay, neuter, vaccine, pet ID package for free, because that's what the pet would have got had it come into the shelter. So we help pet owners understand what makes a good bio, how to take a good picture. We serve as their mentor, and in turn, their role really essentially becomes the adoption counselor. They commit to a time frame, that works best for them, and also allows us to manage our intake before surrendering it to the shelter. So they write the bios, take the photos, they respond to the people who are interested in adopting their pet, and they make that connection. Does that answer that part of the question?
Yeah, and you used home to home, right?
Well, we actually use both home to home and adopt a pet, the rehome by adopt a pet. We like to provide that one-on-one support. And we really focused our purpose of this on being able to provide support. So we had been using Rehome by Adopt a Pet for several years, and it was good for us, but really we saw a huge change when we also added home to home and had a little bit more one-on-one interaction with people.
One more question, Shelly. Do you have a notion of how many animals you've prevented from coming into the shelter?
Yeah, we've been doing it for a year. August was actually makes 1 year that we've been doing the program in its entirety. And there's been over 800 animals that have been posted for adoption on our Self-Rehoming site that we have helped one-on-one. And of those 800 animals, only 71 were ever surrendered to the shelter. So that's like an 88% adoption success rate, which is like way better than ours. So, I think that shows that pet owners really know what they're doing. If you give them some support and some guidance, that they can do it. They can make it happen. And we don't have a lot of pushback. I mean, not once we explain, and we explain to them that we're going to help them and give them the support that they need.
There's a lot of questions popping up in the chat, but a good one is, how much staff is devoted to helping those pet owners?
Well, we have one dedicated employee that operates our home to home rehoming program. And we do, also integrate our intake staff, the intake service representatives to assist with kind of funneling through and getting people, the information that they need to make a decision and to see how long it's going to take them, or how long of a period they have to find a home, before they have to surrender it. So there's more than one person involved, but really it is built around one person that's managing all of this. And, one of the things that I like to point out is, for us, just to give like basic care, basic stuff. This is not our cost of care in total, but just the very basics. It costs us about $250 for every animal that comes in. So if those 800 animals had come into the shelter, that's over $200,000 in resources that we've tied up with those animals. So to me, it's worth the time and the resource. It's worth, dedicating an employee for, because you're able to kind of just repurpose employees in other ways. So we feel like that's really been it's really helped us over this summer, really, because I think that, the pandemic and, it's long been forecasted that owner surrenders would increase, and we're seeing that. And I see so many shelters that are struggling with it right now. But we were able to get ahead of that with programming, and that has kept pets from entering the shelter. And I feel it's what's kept us from having to euthanize healthy, friendly animals this summer. That, and we have a kick-ass team who really never gives up hope and really who stays focused on life saving.
Shelly, that's just a reflection of your leadership. God, just the savings, but not just that, what's best for that animal going from a home to a home, and the people and just the building of relationships with your community, just excellent. How about you, Mike? Same question. What element did you implement that has had the biggest impact on life saving? You're muted, Mike. Of course you are.
Why wouldn't I be muted? It sounds better when I'm muted. You know, the 11 elements, I think they all tie together. So when we say one, it's hard to pick just one. I would say the most impactful to our organization has been the lost pet reunification. Keeping animals out of the shelter to begin with saves us so much time for our other programs. For example, we have a program called the First 48. Some of you have been on the calls, you've heard me talk about that. That program there, we ask everybody who's compassionate enough to pick an animal up off the street. Because let's face it, when you go to buy a car, when you go to a car lot, you're going to buy a car. You pick up an animal off the street, you're not picking it up because you don't care about the animal. You're picking it up because you're compassionate, you care about it. So why not act on that compassion and ask them, for the first 48 hours, can you hold on to that animal? Can you reach out to your local neighborhoods? We'll give you flyers, we'll give you food crates, anything you need. And let's keep that animal in that community, because our data shows that once it leaves that neighborhood, it's not going back. 71% of the animals that go through that program don't come into our shelter. That's huge for us, because strays are our #1 intake of animals. So when 71% of the people who used to bring the animals in are no longer bringing them in, and they find their owners, that's big. And over 87% of all the animals, when they leave that we only get 13 to 14% home once they come in the shelter. So the data's there. It's been huge for us, and that allows us to focus on everything else we do.
Mike, how many animals is that? What did you say, 71%?
71% through the end of July is where we're at. And so far this year, it's almost 900 animals that haven't come into the shelter, that would normally walk through the door, because that's the way we used to be. We used to be a rotating door. We tried to get them all in and we tried to get them all out. In the meantime, we tried not to euthanize it. That was our whole purpose in life. And that's changed. So we have to change with it.
Did you quantify the monetary value of that? Not to mention staff not having to care, feed, medicate, all those things, you know.
I didn't. And the reason for that is we're a small organization. I only have 5 staff. Well, I'm going to have 5 staff, whether I bring in the 3,400 animals a year I used to, or whether I bring in the 900 animals that I have this year. So our only outlay of cost is staffing. My organization is set up to where if we want to do anything other than staff the place, we have to find a way to pay for it.
Right.
So when I look at that and I go to the city with our budgets are the same. Budgets never change. It's a matter of what we can do within that budget, how we can get other funding as needed.
Mike, I presume with such a small team that all of your staff members are engaged in this first 48. Have they all embraced it?
They are. They don't have a choice. It's just, we're small, like others on here. If it doesn't work, we fire them and we all clean kennels. It's just the way it works. So everybody's embraced it. They don't know any different, and it's working. So that helps. When we started this whole process a year and a half ago, we did reorganize. I have 5 staff members. Those used to all be staff members that set the front desk, cleaned kennels, and dealt with the intake and outcome of animals. I knocked that group of people down to 3 and put in a programs coordinator and marketing and fundraising coordinator. So nice. Everybody still answers all the questions, but the roles have changed.
Like there's a question in the chat, and I'm gonna presume that this is a very small percentage, but how do you address the problem of a finder who who keeps the pet, or rehomes it to somebody else, doesn't, or transfers it to a rescue and doesn't do all the things we need them to do.
Well, here's where I look at that. We still take all that information in our system. We still take all the same lost pet information that we would have as if they came in, with photos, with everything. We still have that information. So what's the difference in somebody being compassionate enough and finding a home for it themselves and us having to put it up for adoption? If that owner comes forward to us, we're going to provide the information on who has the animal. It's just that easy. There's no difference there. It's just we're shifting everything out to the community because the community wants to help us. We just have to explain to them and give them a reason and a purpose to help.
Right. And people have been doing this without our intervention for a very long time. And now we're giving them all these tools, so they're going to be even better at it. And I honestly, truly believe most people are good. And like you said, the person with compassion who finds an animal typically does want it to go back home. Jorge, how about you? What's your number one element?
Oh, thanks, Gina. Hello, everyone. I think for me would be community partnerships. We've always been wanting to, I've been with the organization for about 4 years now, and we've had some really rough challenges through our history. And one was just not having partnerships in the community. We have no partnerships with rescue organizations or just community organizations, whether they were animal related or human related or housing related. We just didn't have those partnerships. We slowly started developing, and then when the pandemic hit, it just kind of lit a fire of other agencies really wanting to work together. And when we were approaching agencies out in the community that were not even animal related, they were surprised that we were wanting to go out in the community and help our pet owning community. And one of our biggest partners turned out to be a Methodist church in one of our neighborhoods that has the highest call volume for animal control, for running at large, bite cases, you name it. This is based on, our GIS mapping. This general area within our city had the largest call volume. So we decided to partner with the church, and what we did is we opened a pet resource center in the church. So we leased an office space. We have it set up with a couch, a conference table, a small office. We have pet food, pet costumes, you name it, toys, treats, collars, leashes. We do on a weekly, actually, I have a team out there today. We're there at, from 5 to 7 p.m. every Thursday. The church hosts what they call the People's Market. And it's like a farmer's market where vendors will come and they'll sell bread and donuts and ice cream. And we're there selling animal services and how can we keep you and your pets together. And whether it's free rabies vaccines, microchipping, signing them up for spay neuter. This has attracted other agencies like a local spay neuter clinic in the community that's not too far away from that neighborhood. But the church partnership was a very unique partnership because everybody was like, what do you guys have? Yeah, we have an office in the church. Our county government at the time, our leadership at the time was very supportive and enthusiastic about that relationship. So they were all gung-ho about us having a pet resource center in the community. So I think for us, it's been the community partnerships has been one of the biggest HOS elements for us.
That's excellent. And I know that you use volunteers at the church, but do your staff ever have the opportunity to go there?
Yes. So we alternate staff from our animal control officers, our field staff, to our medical staff. So right now we have 2 staff members and 3 volunteers that are normally there. So our community engagement manager, he's normally there every Thursday, and then we just rotate the other staff members. So if we're doing rabies vaccine clinic, we might have an animal control officer and one of our veterinary technicians there. It really depends. If we're doing humane education, we might have our volunteer coordinator there with our community engagement manager. So we try to rotate and give our staff an opportunity to get out of the shelter, those brick and mortar walls, and go out and start experiencing these HOS elements in real life, not just reading it or seeing a webinar, but go out there, talk to people, have a good time, buy you a funnel cake while you're there, whatever it is. So that has really opened up a lot of enthusiasm, because then they come back the next day and start talking about what they did, what they saw.
Yeah, it's just absolutely fascinating how people can transform when they're given an opportunity to face with the people that we serve. So cool. Good for you. That's super exciting.
Yeah, but it hasn't always been, rainbows and unicorns.
Of
There's
course.
been those challenges where, you do have folks that are just like, that's never going to work. Why are you wasting your time? And, it's sometimes coming from staff and staff in management positions where you're hoping, why are we thinking this way? And we do have to go through some staff changes sometimes in order for us to continue to move forward. So it has not been just like, again, rainbows and unicorns. There's been some challenges, but the outcome it's been tremendous.
Perfect. Good for you. Congratulations. And what's going on in Oakland? Which element has impacted your life saving? And I think the audience needs to understand we have five very different organizations, or 4 different organizations on this call. Their geographics, their demographics, socioeconomics, and Oakland is a very challenging city. I grew up near there. So, Anne, what's happening in Oakland?
So our focus is pet support services, and and it's interesting to hear everybody else, because I think we're all saying essentially the same thing: is let's get out ahead of the problem and help people before they come to the shelter. So for us, it's really three prongs. Is our intake people, our animal control officers. In either case, when they're interacting with people, their first question is there something we can do to help you keep your pets? And so, if people are showing up to surrender their animals, that's the first question that we're going to ask. And the animal control officers, where not that long ago, the only tool they had for somebody that, even if they loved their animal, if they couldn't afford the veterinary care, we would perceive that as neglect, and we would seize that animal. And more often than not, in truth, that animal would come to the shelter and be euthanized. And so, I talk to animal control officers who say that, not that long ago, that was their job, was to seize animals from people, and then a week later, euthanize that animal. And so what we are really focusing on is providing access to veterinary care. And so the third prong of that is, so those are people that we were called out to interact with, or somebody that shows up at the shelter, but then we're also trying to reach people before they ever need our services. And so we're doing now monthly veterinary clinics. Everything is free, and we're providing all the general wellness, but also doing exams. And if there are needs that are beyond what we could do in an outreach clinic model, we're making appointments for people to come to the shelter. We're doing tons of free spay neuter. And we're really seeing just a tremendous change in our intake numbers, a huge decrease in intake, a huge increase in owner surrenders. And really seeing a huge change in how people perceive us as actually providing services, and being a help to the community in a way that we never have.
So I'm sure there's somebody in the audience that thought, how are you affording to do this? But essentially you're shifting your costs, because if you have fewer coming in, you can devote that dollar amount to helping an animal and keeping it with its family.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing. So I've only been the director for about 1.5 years, but I've been associated with the shelter. I started as a volunteer in 2009. I ran a rescue organization that supported this shelter for many years. So I've seen this shelter, through many different phases. And it's been just a typical practice that, the cages have been divided in half, dogs have been doubled up, cats have been doubled up, animals that were just sitting here and getting sick and a lot getting euthanized. And we haven't doubled up a single cage, and we have cage space. I mean, it's August, we have cage space in our cat gallery, and we're not turning anybody away. So this is not making it difficult to surrender. This is providing an alternative. And so it's extraordinary. And it is, as Gina said, it's all with existing resources. So one of my major things when I started was just restructuring our budget. So I had an opportunity, because there was a vacancy, to delete a senior management position, which was painful. I would love to still have it, but I did that so that we could hire another vet. And what we're finding is, by having fewer animals in the shelter, you know, we need fewer people to care for them. And so we can move things around. So having a second vet means we can be doing community serving programming full time. And it's, you know, obviously there's a limit as to what we can do. And I think if we were to really experience the entire need of our community, not that we can necessarily meet the entire need, but we can do a whole lot more than we were doing before and really make a difference.
Excellent. And how did your veterinary team take this change? Were they excited to be able to provide a higher level of care to privately owned animals, or how did you make that culture shift?
Well, you know, I've been so lucky in a way. It's kind of right place, right time for so many people. I mean, our whole team is so thrilled to be able to do this. And so part of it was when I first started, we didn't have a vet. And so as we were hiring a vet, we were saying, you know, this is what we're wanting to do is community serving medicine. And the vet that we hired, was already her passion, and she already had a lot of experience. And it's really all she wants to do. She really doesn't want to be just a kind of standard shelter vet. So for her, it's her dream too. So, and you know how that happens where you attract the right people and they attract the right people. And so it's just, everybody's just thrilled to be able to be in this position to provide this kind of service.
Yeah, wow. Talk about aligning the stars. Good for you. If we can, Mike, I'm coming back to you because you and I had a little conversation this week about what happened at Cabot, and it's kind of been a transformation, if you will, a big transformation. And you created this graphic that I'm going to ask you to share that kind of illustrates. We're also looking for a videographer that can turn this into this like superstar dynamic presentation. So if there's anybody in the audience that wants to help Mike do that, put your name in the chat. But Mike, why don't you share your graphic and talk through it? It might help some people that aren't quite sure what Haas is really all about understand it better.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. This is our old shelter. We'll just look at it like this. Everything focused around the animal shelter, their intake and outcome. That was it. We had a small spay and neuter clinic, a small vaccination clinic, small pet food pantry, microchip clinic, but that was nothing. Everything was all about the intake of animals and the outcome of animals, as I discussed earlier. Well, that's horrible. It served its purpose. Our euthanasia rate went from 67% 12 years ago down to less than 1%. So we worked really hard on euthanasia, but we were still having more and more animals come in every year. So this is what our animal support services looks like now. This is what I call our universe. Prior, our old universe, everything went around intake and outcome from the shelter. Whereas now, as you'll see at the very bottom, our pet adoptions that's just another program to us. It's not any more important or less important than our Paws on the Ground program or our No Paws Left Behind or Help Me Heal program. These are all programs that one day but thanks to Haas and some help realization there from all the great folks that helped through there, these are all programs meant to assist the community and keep animals out of the shelter and keep animals home. So this is our universe now. I mean, if I could get a graphic of this with just the center in the middle and then everything revolving around it, that's the way it is. It's no longer revolved around intake and outcome. That is just one small program to a much bigger service center that we have. And you tell me when we stop sharing this, and I will. I'm not good at this.
Yeah, it's amazing, and we are going to find a way to make those be like planets and hover around the center. And I'm just, no disrespect, Mike, but people, this is Arkansas in the United States. If Arkansas can do it, the rest of us can do this. I am so incredibly thrilled to see what's happening. But you had some really good news that you shared. I think it was last week or the week before. That's happened in your city. Can you share that with the audience?
Sure. We are a small town in Arkansas. We're less than 30,000 people. Our animal services, our old animal shelter where we're at currently was built for 400, 600 animals. We just, because of all the programs we offer and the support of our community, the voters just approved a bond to build us a new state-of-the-art animal service center. And this animal service support center is different. It's got 4 surgery rooms with an observation bay for training vet techs and veterinarians to come in and observe. It's got a human food pantry. Tell me 12 years ago that we would have had a human food pantry as part of animal services. You just wouldn't have it. It's got an education center. So it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of the money is there. The community just has to get involved and understand what you're doing. And it passed with 61%. There's not a politician in the country that wouldn't take a 61% vote. So I'm taking it. And we're happy about that. But one thing I would like to mention, Gina, when we put all 25 of those programs in place in one day. When we started this a year and a half ago, did we have money? I didn't have money for a single program. My fear was that if I had this program, I didn't have this program, then what if somebody come in and needed this program? How do we handle that? So we put every one of the programs in together. The money will come. We will find the money as needed. I think too many times we sit back and we think, well, we've got to have 12-page written protocol in this program, and we've got to do a test market here, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do that. Why? It just stops success. That's all. So anyway, I'm done talking, Gina. But
no, Mike, it's such a great example for everyone. And I think it's important too, your animal shelter is not old. It's a relatively new facility. And now your community is going to spend more money to expand, to have this community-based programming.
Yeah, our shelter was built in 2006, which in animal sheltering terms is brand new. But now we only have 20 kennels. And it was built strictly to house a few animals and then euthanize the rest. It's just the way it was. But the community, they saw the need. They're also putting this in an area that animal shelters typically aren't put. We're putting this right downtown in the Arts and Entertainment District, 2.5 blocks from City Hall. So it's a community service center, which is what we're all trying to accomplish here, is being more community focused. And there you are. I don't know. We just haven't.
I hope I get an autographed copy of your book when you publish it. No, it's everything everyone's doing on this call is just so amazing. There is a question that, and I don't want to forget to ask it. So it was at the end, but I want to ask it now of all of you. And I'll go back to Shelly. I get a lot of other shelters and people inquiring to me about what is this Haas thing? And we're thinking about doing it, but we're not quite sure. If each of you could give a word of advice to another shelter director that's considering the implementation of Haas, what would you tell them? What would you say?
Just do something, right? Just do something. There's hanging fruit within each element. So maybe you can't. Maybe you're not as awesome as Mike and you can't do it all, the elements in one day. But you can do one thing, So I think that, do that first thing, that'll build up the momentum to be the next. And then you'll start, getting some firm data that you can use to support. And then the other piece of that really is just spend enough time up front explaining to people what Haas is. And by people, your core team, you have to get the staff that work with you, the volunteers that work with you on board. They don't have to know every single aspect of it, but they have to understand what it's all about and grasp that. So I think, that would be my advice. Just do one thing.
Thanks, Shelly. Good advice. Start somewhere. Jorge, what about you? What advice would you offer?
Oh man, my advice is never agree with stupid. Just do it. I agree with Shelly 100%. I think if you sit around and listen to your naysayers and that is never going to work and that is never going to work, and whether they're internal or external of your organization, there's times where we have to take some risk. And if you look at what we've been talking about, or you listen to what we've been talking about, there is a risk with those animals staying in the shelter, period. I think the risk is higher in our facilities, the way we have been operating for years, compared to these new elements and just figuring out which ones at a time. Like, foster is one of the elements. We're not at a position to kind of start our foster program, but there's other elements that we can actually just go out there and start and try and figure out. But I would just not listen to the naysayers. Build your team, move forward slowly, patiently, with confidence, and then you'll see how many other folks come along with you.
Thanks, Jorge. When you were talking, it reminded me that we're the experts, right? And we need to act like we are. And we're the ones that should be telling our communities, this is the best thing for the animals. And I think sometimes we forget that for some reason. And what would your advice be to someone considering this?
It's similar to what these guys just said. I think about getting the buy-in for sure, but getting it at just the kind of the highest level of conceptually, like, wouldn't it be better to not be operating in this reactionary way and spending all of this time and energy to rehome animals that already had homes? Wouldn't it be better just to keep them in their homes and really focus our energy where it's actually needed? And when I was presented with the opportunity for Oakland to be one of the tier 1 shelters, I had just started, and I, kind of lesson 1 for a new leader is don't go in and make wholesale change. But I just I can't miss this opportunity. And so that's how I presented it is, wouldn't this be thrilling and exciting? And so that people came at it from that, like, this is really an opportunity for us to do something that we can feel good about.
It's terrific. Mike, I'll go back to you. Advice.
I would just say barriers. We talk about barriers to adoption. We talk about barriers to everything. Don't be your own barrier. We're just trying to be good neighbors. We want what's best for the community. And that's what HOS is. Every element in HOS thinks about the people and the pets. So as long as you approach it to where you want to be a good neighbor, you want to provide sugar if your neighbor needs sugar, they'll repay the favor 10 times. They will, or 100 times, as I last found out in my last little venture. With $50,000, we got $93,000 in return. So it's just be a good neighbor. HOS is there to make sure the people and the animal and the community are taken care of. If you're not looking at it in a selfish way, it'll all work out, and just go for it. I mean, you just got to just make that move one step across the line.
Yeah. And it's not rocket science. It takes effort, takes energy, desire, but it's not rocket science. And a lot of the elements too don't actually take any money. Like, I think about, my favorite topic is getting lost animals back home where they belong. It's the lowest hanging fruit we have to increase life saving. And it's the cheapest thing we could be doing. Do any of you, because I have to ask, have you really focused on increasing your return to home rates, formerly known as return to owner rates? They're all nodding. Shelly, what have you done? Tell me all about it.
We've done a lot of things, really. And again, we like to focus on keeping them out of the shelter to begin with, because once they come in, it is much harder to get them home, even though we have implemented things within the shelter that helps them to get home. And one thing that we have implemented, if they do come into the shelter, that I think, when Mike mentioned barriers and removing those barriers is, it's free. It's absolutely free to reclaim a lost pet from our shelter. And, people can come get their pet. They don't have to wait until payday or choose between whether or not they make a house payment or a car payment on time just to get their dog out of jail. If you understand what it costs for an animal to enter your shelter and stay there until it has a positive life-saving outcome, you don't really understand how expensive it can get for a lost pet to stay a couple of extra days. And you won't be able to get those decision makers to fund alternative methods or to consider, free reclaim. But when you understand that, when you understand what animals really need to come into your shelter, what can remain supported in the community and return to home, I think that's when the magic starts happening. And I mean, I've got a long list of things that we've implemented for getting pets home, and I'm happy to go through them, but I want everybody else to have a chance to talk to.
Thank you, Shelly. For some reason, your audio is scratchy, so I'm going to recommend you leave and come back. Maybe that will help. Okay, thanks. And I was thinking, I don't know why, but when I think of Oakland, I think of unions, labor organizations. And I'm sure that we have government agencies in our audience, and having come from a government agency, I am intimately familiar with the challenges that come with unions. Have you had any struggles in that area with the changes you're implementing with staff and your labor unions?
No, we haven't, but I'll say my previous work was in public housing, which was also very union based. And so it was something that I was really careful about coming in, was cultivating those relationships and building trust that, you know, that we really do care about our staff as much as we care about the programming. And so we have really positive relationships with the unions. And I think part of it is that we don't have any pushback from the staff. I mean, the staff are relieved to be able to operate in this way. And so they're so much happier. So we're really not having any problems in that regard.
Good. I keep hearing that too, that overwhelmingly people working in this field that have implemented the elements of HOS, or at least some of them, feel better about the work they're doing. And it's such a hard job anyway, right? So it's pretty cool that we've come up with something that brings more joy at work. And it's fascinating to me that in an industry where we're historically known for not liking people, adding the people part is what's making us feel more intrinsically valuable in the work that we do. And I know that, and all of us, even me, and I'm not in the industry anymore, have experienced the naysayers, the critics, and we don't need to talk about it because we know they're out there. But what I want to hear is, what about the supporters in your communities? Do you have people that are just pretty jazzed about the changes? Talk about that. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Please, Jorge.
I think on the supporter side, what's easier for me, we have a animal advisory board that works with Animal Services. So we meet monthly, and they were the first ones to jump on. And in each board member represents a commissioner on the board. So it's a diverse board. There are some folks who have animal experience and others who are volunteering, or others are just, you know, someone from the community who's interested in animal welfare issues in Guilford County. So that for us was probably the biggest step forward, was having our animal advisory board buy in to the direction we wanted to move in with Animal Services. I mean, we were having conversations, 2 years ago about just our intake and our challenges about intakes and surrenders, and that we're not taking everyone, and animals are upset, people are upset, animals are not being, accepted at the shelter. And now it's like, good, you guys are helping them out in the community. That's great. What other stuff are we doing out in the community to keep them from coming in? And when the numbers are high in the shelters, like, what else can we do to help to get them out? And kind of going back to the lost and found piece. With the pandemic, we didn't have our volunteers at the shelter, but we created a committee of volunteers, and we call them our pet detectives. So they're in at home on social media, Paw Boost, you name it. So as soon as we're posting animals on our network, they're picking them up, and we're able to reunite those owners much quicker, because now we have these free resources at home just doing that work, and they feel great because they were able to connect, the human and their lost pet. So again, just to answer your question, our Animal Advisory Committee has been one of our biggest supporters from the get-go.
Excellent. Anybody else have some supporters in your community that really made this a lot easier?
I'll go. I'm kind of on two fronts. One thing that I was really careful to do was build relationships with our council members, our city council. And where Animal Services, like so many cities, there were years where the council would say, here's an easy way to save money. Let's just get rid of our shelter. It's not really a critical function for the city. And, really working with them to understand that we're a human services organization, and, the same people that we're serving are the people that need housing and that need, that have food insecurity. They're the very same people, and having animals in that companionship, that's literally life-saving. And so changing the way they see the work that we're doing has been instrumental. And the other thing that I just heard is there was a rescue organization that had a contentious relationship with the shelter in the past, and it was one of those that would be on social media saying they're rescuing from this awful shelter. They're out there saying that we are operating like a rescue organization and that we're actually helping people, and and they're so surprised, and they're hearing that from people in the community, that people came here and got help. And so I think people are really starting to see that it's making a difference.
Yeah, and that's spot on what you said, though. All of the needs that our governments try to solve for people, food insecurity, housing, the animal piece is part of that as well. If you're good at having those conversations with the right people, they have these aha moments, and it's like suddenly they're on your side and it changes everything. Did any of the others want to comment on this public support communities? Because we spend so much time in this business talking about the people that hate us. I think it's important to remember that we have more support than not.
Well, I'll just chime in here real quick. I think Jorge said best, out in the community. You have to be out in the community. Go to the neighborhoods. These are the people that are going to get on Facebook and all these other social medias when somebody says something about you, and it's going to be somebody you don't even know. They're going to be the ones that jump in there and go to bat for you. We don't play the social media game in our department. It's just not something we do. We let others take care of that. But, take your vaccination clinics to the neighborhood. If nothing more, hand out popsicles on a Saturday at the local park. We're everywhere somebody is. For the last 12 years, I've not missed a city council meeting. I've not missed a planning commission meeting. I give a monthly meeting somewhere, either at the Lions Club, the Kiwanis Club, somewhere, and they want to hear from you. So these are your supporters. You've got from the man who's voted in and the woman who's voted in, all the way down to people who vote. We don't have an individual organization. We just don't focus that way. But if you're out there and everybody sees you and you're doing good everywhere you go, you're not just issuing citations and stealing dogs, and then they look at you as people and they understand your compassion.
Spot on. And and something else it made me think about, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. Is it Michigan Humane? It'll come to me. But he's conducting a study on the economic impact of animals in communities. I mean, most of us know this. Americans spent $103 billion last year during the pandemic on animals, between treats, food, vets, toys, all the stuff we do. And so we are an integral part of our community when it comes to being an economic engine. Someone in the audience, I just wanted to share with the panelists in case you hadn't seen it, would like to share the recording with our county facility for awakenings and starting points as they're growing and framing out a new budget with consideration to focus on animals. We are a big part of people's lives. Matt Pepper, thank you, Roy. Matt Pepper is the one who's working on that. Hopefully he will be sharing his final product soon, because it's very compelling for the people that are holding the purse strings and making those budgetary decisions. We really matter. And now that we're more integrated with our communities, we matter even more. So, I mean, it's a perfect time. Shelly, did you want to add something? Is your voice fixed?
I don't know. Is it okay?
You're better.
Awesome. I don't know that I have much more to say than that, other than just remember that, people rarely send emails and letters and phone calls of support. So you have to go, like Mike said, go seek it out, go out into the community. Those people are out there. They are supporting you. And don't focus your energy on the pushback or the naysayers, like Jorge mentioned. If you're out there educating, if you're supporting your community and you're doing what it is that they want you to do, and I think my community probably represents many communities across the United States and the world. They don't want to see animals living in cages in a shelter when they don't have to be, and they don't want animals to be killed because there's not an open kennel to put them in. And so it's up to us to look for whatever that next best practice is or that innovative idea and try them out. That's how you get supporters. That's the feedback that we get from our supporters, is that they appreciate that we're listening to them, that we're being transparent about it, that we're asking for help in the right way.
This idea popped into my head. Don't ask me where they come from, but they just do. Being part of HOSS has really opened up my world and introduced me to so many new people. If someone were joining this community, what is that like? Jorge, you look like you have an answer, but I feel like I have. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is what Shelly was talking, just kind of like feeding off of what Shelly just said is, yeah, this is innovative, period. But not just is it innovative, it's look what others are doing. So it's not your crazy own idea that you're trying to sell. It's this innovative movement. It is this innovative thing that's happening, well, based on our attendees across the world, right? Like, we all have these crazy ideas, but we didn't have a platform to jump off of because we were the only ones thinking that, oh my God, I'm the only crazy one to do this, because we kept talking about the same things over and over. I've told Bobby this, when we first talked way back when, is our shelters, our organizations have always been running us. The organization has always been telling us what to do. Now times are changing and we are able to start managing the programs and what is really and truly happening in our organizations. But HOSS, for me, has given me the opportunity to say, look what others are doing. So it's not crazy, Jorge's idea. It's a crazy idea and we might spin it off a little different, but look what Shelly's doing. Look at Mike's doing. Look what Ann is doing. And and again, we're all so spread out across the country that it's working in Oakland and it's working in Arkansas and it's working in South Carolina. We're crazy North Carolina. I mean, the veterinary board doesn't allow us to work on publicly owned animals. So we can't do a community-based clinic, but we can partner with our veterinary partners in the community to provide those services. So that's why, for me, community partnerships is so vital to our success with HOSS. So I think HOSS is just giving me that platform to just be crazier and innovative and just say, well, they're doing it, why can't I? That type of thing.
Yeah. And the people that are doing it are getting some real results, and there's data to substantiate those improvements. And there's so many of us now. I don't know, I just feel like I'm part of this network and family where if I don't know something, I can call any one of you or text you and say, what would you do? And I think that's one of the beauties of being part of this project, is that there's just this ginormous family of resource and just kind of sometimes moral support, because this is not an easy job, right?
I would add to that too, the kind of, if you go to a good conference, that the feeling that you have that you're just so overwhelmed with great ideas and super inspired, and it's so great to connect with other people that are that breathe the air that you breathe, that most people outside of this industry don't understand, and to be perpetually in that place. That's what HOSS is to me. I mean, it's so thrilling to just kind of have this momentum. We get so much more done because we're checking in all the time and learning from others. So it's fabulous.
We've only got a couple minutes. Go ahead, Shelly.
Well, I was just going to say, why wouldn't I want to take guidance from like 500 organizations that participate with HOSS, many who are experts in their field and leaders in the industry. Why wouldn't I want to take guidance from that and take advantage of all of that information? And, yes, every once in a while we come up with a really great idea in Greenville, but the majority of our success is based on stealing ideas from other people, other organizations.
Animal welfare is a great business. Plagiarism is okay, and we steal from each other all the time. It's an awesome thing. Mike, did you want to add anything to that, since we are almost out of time? I do want to tell the audience, and I'm shameless, I am a big RTO, RTH person. That's all I live and breathe. So if you need help with improving your reunification rates, I'm free and I'm happy to help. I've dropped my email and my phone number in the chat. Yeah, someone just said it perfectly. Don't reinvent the wheel, just paint it with your colors. Mike, did you have one final parting statement?
All I would say is Ann hit it around the head. I mean, this is a conference that never ends. We're always learning. We're always talking to experts. Most of those experts are on this panel and others every week, 3 to 4 times a week. So I don't even need to go anywhere, although I would like to see you all, but we don't have to go
I
anywhere.
would too. We're going to see
I'm
each
at a
other
conference
someday.
every day.
Well, I just want to extend a thanks to those of us that joined us tonight. I know that a recording will be available in a couple of days. Whoever wants to show it to your county council or your city council, you'll be able to do that. And I'm sure that anybody on this panel would be more than happy to provide you with a statement or a phone call or anything to help you along your path as we see where this takes us. And I just, again, let's not forget where we came from, but let's also keep our eye on where we're going. So Rory, are you still out there? Bobby, are we doing okay?
I am. Yes. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And I hope you all have a lovely evening.
And boa noite to my friends in Brazil. Ciao, ciao.
Good night.